Hey, what's up guys, Lord Civic here, and today we're finally going to be doing a video on something you guys have been asking for since the unboxing video of my LG GX9, and that is a comparison between the PG32UCDM and the 45 GX950A. Now, to be honest, you guys have been asking for this a lot, even more so than the Oled G9 video, which I'm going to do in comparison with this monitor as well, but realistically, when I thought about it, I kind of got it. You know, they're both 4K. They're both OLED, and in different ways, they are two of the absolute best monitors on the market that give you a different type of cinematic experience at your desk. And, you know, for a lot of people that are targeting the absolute best of the best, low-key, these are, if not the best out of the best, some of the best monitors that you can get currently right now. So in this video, we're going to be covering a lot of things. First and foremost, we're going to be covering the aspect ratio, the PPI, the size of the monitors. Then we're going to be covering matte versus glossy, which I need to do an entire video on that separately, in addition to the one that we're going to do covering in this video. And then lastly, we're going to just talk about, you know, gaming, productivity, and just everyday use of the monitor. So regardless, I hope you guys enjoy this video. In addition, I do plan on doing like a highlight reel of, you know, the PG32UCDM, then also another separate highlight reel video of the 45 GX950A, so make sure to tune into that. Also, I'm going to be uploading different clips and stuff like that, the B-roll and stuff like that in full on like TikTok and on YouTube Shorts, so make sure to go and follow me on there, or even go to my short section here on YouTube. With saying that, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and let's hop right in. First and foremost, let's talk PPI numbers. The PPI on the PG32UCDM is about 138. The PPI on the LG GX9 is about 125. In comparison to even a smaller monitor that's also 4K, the PG2070UCDM has a PPI of about, I think, 160 plus. So yes, the PG32UCDM is going to look sharper than the LG GX9 at the same distance. Now, with that said, one is an ultrawide and one is not. In addition, the size of the monitors is a lot different, not just when it comes to horizontal distance. So first and foremost, for reference, the G9 OLED is about 14 inches tall. The PG32UCDM for the screen, all these numbers I'm giving you are screen sizes, is about 16 inches. The LG GX9 has a height of about 18 inches, whopping 18 inches. It is downright ridiculous how much of your viewing space that this monitor takes up, especially when you're like right up in front of it. I can just say right here, right now, and I think I even mentioned this in one of my videos prior to this, this is the most immersive gaming monitor that I've ever played with. It is downright ridiculous just how much of your viewing angles it takes up. Like, it's crazy. And, you know, that also ties into the curvature of the monitor as well, in addition to the height and then, you know, the resolution and stuff like that. It creates this almost rich experience of like the highest quality monitor that you've seen prior, like, you know, when it comes to just resolution, different stuff like that. And then also the height and the vertical slice and then the curvature of like 800R almost fits around like pewter, you know, Lego Batman's computer, like the Batcave. It's so freaking cool, the level of immersion factor this monitor is able to give you. And, you know, let me just say this right here, right now. As a 16:9 monitor, the PG32UCDM has given me the most immersive gaming experience for 16:9. It is not a slouch. The PPI being at 138, and then also the monitor still being pretty large. You know, not as large as, say, like an LG G5, 48-inch, or, you know, the C5, 42-inch or whatever. But it's still very sharp. It's not still very sharp. It is very sharp, and it still takes up a lot of your viewing angle compared to, say, like a 24-inch or a 27-inch like the PG2070UCDM. Now, the reason that I highlight all these things and, you know, talk about the aspect ratio and the PPI and different stuff like that is, with all those things, yeah, that matters. But one thing that you also got to take into account when getting either of these monitors and different stuff like that, as I said at the beginning of the video, these are basically like the upper echelons of monitors. Both of these monitors cost $1,000 plus. is you got to also think about the pixel count. Now, 4K is about 8 million pixels. That's a lot of pixels to drive. You know, even a 5080 is going to have some trouble with some games like Indiana Jones. I think Indiana Jones can use above the 16 gigabyte limit on the 5080 when it's all maxed out. Cyberpunk, I don't think I've seen it hit more than like 15, 16 on the 4K display. I might be wrong. But just the other day, I did a video on my LG GX9. I reached a whopping number of 24 gigabytes of VRAM usage, okay? So, just for reference, that means that this monitor is basically maxing out the 4090, the previous top-of-the-line graphic card. The 5090 that I have right now, I have the Astro, a lot of you guys already know that, is not really going to have trouble with this. But you got to take this into account when choosing which monitor you want to get, and then also, you know, combining it with the GPU and stuff like that. You got to take all those variables into account. Now, on top of that, you know, not everybody's going to play with the max settings, and we're going to get more into all that gaming and the different stuff like that when we get to the last section of the video where we talk about overall gaming experience and all the different stuff like that. But I think those are important factors that you have to think about when you want to get each monitor. And as I said, both of these monitors give very immersive gaming experiences, but, you know, just in two different ways. So, next thing we're going to talk about is the widely debated topic of glossy versus matte. So first and foremost, let me just make this explicitly clear. The matte finish on the LG is not the same level of matte you would find on an IPS, VA, or even TN panel. On a lot of those monitors, it almost looks like Vaseline is smeared across the display, and it gives this almost ugly look of like colors just being completely washed out and blah, 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 and all those different stuff like that. The matte finish on the LG, and I've even had the honor of seeing the 32-inch because my brother owns one, is not as aggressive. It is more so done as a preemptive tool, so you know the ends of the screens don't get reflections off each other. You have any lighting in the room or any sunlight or whatever, it does not pick any of those things up. Also, another thing is that I have to highlight, I have a ridiculously bright computer right here with the Lian Li EVO XL. I have Lian Li fans that have screens on them. I also have the streamer cables, my GPU, and everything glows. My LG GX9 does not pick up a whiff of those. Even when, you know, the monitor is completely off, you get this almost like, oh, the best way to explain it, like, you know, in Shrek or whatever, the magic mirror, like when it's off, you get this like, you know, clouded look, but it's not like smeared cloud like matte. Maybe that wasn't the best experience, but it almost looks like this, like, you know, dazed out kind of thing of like, you know, black and then a little daze going out. PG32UCDM is off, or I'm going in between a menu, or, you know, it has a darker wallpaper. Right now I have Weathering with You, which is bright, so kind of like blocks out all the reflections and different stuff like that. It picks up every single little detail of my computer, the trick panorama, the streamer cables, all the different stuff like that. And I almost have to put it at an off angle if I don't want it to do any reflections at all. But like, you know, most of the games that I play are brighter or whatever. When I'm going to play something like, you know, what's a good example? Dead Space or whatever. I would probably just turn off all the lighting and different stuff on my computer and different stuff like that so I can get the most ideal experience. But the reason that I highlight this, you know, when it comes to glossy versus matte is because you have to take different variables into account. Now, as I said, I have to turn off all my lighting and different stuff like that. But realistically, not everybody's going to have an RGB setup in their computer. Not everybody's going to have sunlight blurring right onto their screen. Not everybody's going to have, you know, all these different variables and varieties and different stuff like that to think about. So the reason I highlight that is because this is an important aspect that you have to take into account when saying, okay, I just want glossy. I've heard glossy is better. I've heard glossy gives more vibrant colors. I've heard this about glossy. I've heard that about glossy. But then again, you know, you have other people and other thing that's just like, you know, I need a matte display. I have sunlight going right into my room. The glossy is just not going to work for me and different stuff like that. And that's just like an important aspect of the monitors that you have to think about. Now, when it comes to, you know, text fringing and, you know, the color, the vibrancy of color and different stuff like that, those are like, you know, QD OLED or OLED. You're going to find different stuff like that. Now, I will be honest, I have found that the PG32UCDM gives, you know, more vibrant and punchy colors, edging out the LG GX9 by just a little bit. But for me personally, when it comes to the aspect ratio, the curvature, and just the immersion factor, I don't mind taking that small little hit you get when it, you know, you don't get the punchiness of the colors and different stuff like that when it comes to QD OLED versus OLED. Now, one thing I will say, and you know, we got to talk about black levels and different stuff like that, is without adjustment, the PG32UCDM can almost have like raised black levels. That's not because of the monitor itself, that just, you know, is a QD OLED issue or problem that you find with it. I have found that on all QD OLEDs that I have, I lower the brightness from 50 to about 49 or 48, depending on, you know, what type of picture or different stuff that I want to get. But, you know, the reason I made this whole topic is I just feel like there's a whole bunch of misinformation that's shared, and like people legitimately see that the LG GX9 is a matte display and they're just like, no, it's not for me. But like, I've seen so many subreddit threads and different stuff like that of people just being like, I don't want to get the matte display, I don't want to do that. And then, you know, later, like a week or so later, they're like, you know what, I ordered the tried the monitor, and they're like, it's not as bad as I thought. It honestly, it's not even really as bad as you thought. It's like legitimately seeing it in person. And, you know, I'm somebody that's been playing on my LG GX9 or on my PG32UCDM with the other monitor sitting right beside it. And, you know, they both have their benefits and they both have their negatives based off of their panel type, but like they both bring interesting aspects to the table. And, you know, instead of, you know, saying, okay, I wish this monitor was matte, I wish this monitor was glossy, realistically, I think these companies need to just start making displays with both options. Like, there's no reason that there should not be a matte PG32UCDM. Maybe the Gigabyte or MSI or whatever is matte. I don't know. I haven't done that much research into it. But there needs to be a glossy display with this. Now, I know it probably wouldn't work with the 800R curvature, like as I said, with the reflections of the ends of the monitor. But, you know, maybe one with like a 1200R or 1300R or whatever with glossy finish or whatever. It'd just be really cool to get and really be a really cool option. But honestly, like, after having both for a long time, you really can't go wrong with either. I think it more so is less of a matte versus glossy thing and more so which one would work better for you depending on your lighting conditions and the type of computer you have and just other different variables when it comes to account to that thing. Now, let's hop into what you guys have all been waiting for, which is how is gaming and, you know, just everyday productivity use on both of these monitors. Now, I want to bring up a point that I made earlier in the video, which was the pixel count on each display. Pixels on the PG32UCDM is about 8 million pixels, you know, base 4K resolution, compared to the 21:9 5120 by 2160 is about 11 million pixels on the LG GX9. That means the LG GX9 is about 35% harder to run than a base 4K display. So no, you are not going to be able to play at the exact graphical settings that you play on a 4K display and expect the same, you know, FPS that you would get on the previous display on the LG GX9. Now, I highlight that point, and another point that I want to talk about is, you know, VRAM and different stuff like that. Earlier in the video, I said that the highest VRAM on Cyberpunk that I've seen was about, I think, 16, 17 VRAM usage in Cyberpunk with all maxed out settings, path tracing, all those different aspects and different stuff like that. In Cyberpunk, on the LG GX9, I get about 24 gigabytes of VRAM usage. Now, your brain's probably spiraling and different stuff like that. You're like, what? The 5080 is already, like, you know, there's displays in existence that already max out the VRAM usage? Yes. And Cyberpunk is an old game. Nevertheless, you know, like, when newer titles and different stuff like that come out, I feel that this generation, not even this generation, within the next year, I would not be surprised if there is some game that uses VRAM usage of 30. And I'm talking natively. Obviously, you know, if you download games with mods, probably modded out Skyrim or Witcher, or even Cyberpunk can get probably above 32 gigabytes of VRAM at this aspect ratio and resolution. But like, VRAM is hungry. It's hungry, and like, that's not even to talk about like the resource power of the card itself. For reference, Expedition 33, amazing game. I'm in Act 3 or whatever. The game just continues to blow my mind. It looks absolutely amazing at, you know, all the different DLSS variants, even balance mode. I've been testing it out. That looks very good as well. But if you want to play the game basically in the best way it can possibly look, you have to play with DLAA, which is taking the base resolution of the monitor and then adding DLSS anti-aliasing upscaling on it. And, you know, like things like the hair follicles and like grass and different stuff like that will look sharper than it ever would. On my LG GX9, I get about 55, maybe 60 FPS with the occasional drops to about 40 in the larger open areas. Compared to DLAA on the PG32UCDM, I get around 70 to 90 FPS. That's where you see the difference I'm talking about. And as I said, I have a 5090 Astral, so I have basically the best consumer level GPU that you can play games with. Now, the reason I highlight this point is because a lot of people might see the LG GX9 and they have a 5070 or even a 5080, and they're just like, you know, I'm going to be able to use this monitor to the best of its abilities, or I'm gonna, you know, okay, also, let me just say this. These are like newer games. Older games, you're not really gonna have issues with it, because, you know, a lot of older games don't even have ray tracing or whatever, and like, all you have to do is make sure that the engine is capable of pushing the 165 hertz refresh rate. But when purchasing a monitor, especially like this, if you're gonna plan on playing, you know, like newer games or different stuff like that, I feel like it's an important aspect to look at and an important variable to know at, and you got to take all of these things, as I said, into account when choosing which monitor you're gonna get. Another thing, Witcher. Right now, I've been playing because of the 10-year anniversary. It looks bloody beautiful on the PG32UCDM. In my honest opinion, on the LG GX9, it just looks downright brilliant and is honestly the best way I've ever seen the game. Yes, again, it looks better on my A95L when it comes to picture quality and color accuracy and also brightness, because it's 1600 nits and different stuff like that on that display. But when it just comes to, you know, enveloping you in a 4K monitor and, you know, just taking up your entire viewership, it is downright insane. And that also applies to basically every third-person game you play. Death Stranding, Horizon Forbidden West, The Witcher, or whatever. When it comes to first-person games, it's kind of a little different, and I feel like that difference kind of segments depending on the specific type of game that it is. I would just be 100%. Competitive gaming is better on the PG32UCDM. It would be even better on the PG2070UCDM. But a lot of people that are looking at getting the LG GX9 aren't going to get it for its competitive gaming features. Now, okay, you might be saying, but Lord Civic, you can do the 1080p 330 hertz mode and then, you know, just have the sides of the monitors be black and different stuff like that. Yes, that's cool. Yes, it's a higher refresh rate than 240 hertz. But realistically, as a competitive gamer that has, you know, been 1080p 360 FPS, 1440p 360 FPS, 4K 240 FPS, am I going to take the resolution hit to be able to play at 330 hertz and play at 1080p? No, I'm not. It's just, if I'm going to play a competitive game, and yeah, this is like a whole first world thing, because, you know, not everybody has this choice, but if I'm going to play first-person shooter, competitive game, or even say something like Marvel Rivals, yeah, I would prefer to play on my PG32UCDM over the LG GX9, and that's because I have that option. But not everybody has that option, because not everybody wants to spend almost $3,000 on monitors alone, and I feel like that's, again, a very important aspect that you have to think about when doing these monitors. When I'm picking a monitor, third-person games, just vastly superior on the LG GX9. Witcher, Death Stranding, Horizon, all the different stuff like that. when it comes to games like Doom and I guess Mirror's Edge, sorry, I'm just Dishonored. I'm trying to think of like first person games, BioShock, and they're like campaign games and different stuff like that, then you can make the argument, you know, of an Ultrawide being better. But like when it comes to those competitive games, you know, that do support Ultrawide, which I do have to applaud developers and stuff like that for finally actually supporting Ultrawide in competitive gaming monitors. I remember when Overwatch didn't support Ultrawide for the longest. They are engineered and made a specific way where, you know, they want you to see a specific thing, and the size of the monitors can almost be a distraction at a point, because there's a reason that a lot of competitive gamers have 24-inch monitors, because, you know, being able to see everything that you need to see within a small window is the most ideal. But like, then again, this isn't like a specific competitive gaming monitor, but I just have to say that just so you guys can get a reference of like, you know, people that are looking at getting it for like competitive gaming. Now, for everyday usage, not gonna lie, I have resorted to basically doing all of my video editing, all of my regular work, and everyday like normal usage on the LG GX9. Being able to have two windows on the display, and then also, you know, it being like color accurate and stuff like that. Again, not as color accurate as the PG32UCDM, just outweighs the differences of the monitors. And like, you know, I love them both. And, you know, sometimes when I'm like editing a video, especially my HDR ones with, you know, specific details that I want to make sure looks just right so I can get an idea of how it looks like on the iPhone. Yes, I can do that on the LG GX9, but those like pinpoint perfection things, yes, I will move the window over to my PG32UCDM, make the small critiques and edits there, but, you know, brunt of my work is done on the LG GX9. Now, I really hope this video gave you guys a good idea of like the differences between the two monitors and different stuff like that. As I said, I still need to do the comparison video between this one and the Oled G9, and then also I am finally ready to do just an overall review video of the LG GX9 as well. But as I said, there is definitely benefits, there's definitely negatives to each and both monitors, and just every monitor in general. I'm just really appreciative that we have the choice of so many freaking monitors, and then also TVs being made in mind as like, you know, they might be used as monitors. Like, it's so cool. The LG G5 supports 165 Hertz, which is nuts, right? That puts it at the same refresh rate. I mean, obviously this one has a higher 1080p mode of the LG GX9, but it's just so freaking cool. I just love the option. I remember how limited it was when I got the X34. Like, there was just very little choices, and now, you know, in addition to them being both, you know, we got OLED, we got TN, we got VA, IPS, and just so many resolutions and sizes and monitors and different stuff like that. It's so freaking cool. Regardless, I hope I answered all of your guys' questions. If I didn't, please make sure to comment them in the comment section below. With saying that, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for your patience. Love you guys. Thanks for watching, and hope you guys have a great day.